Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to another Walking Dead discussion. Now I'm once again joined by MJ from Geeklist TV. MJ, why don't you say hello?
Hello.
Okay, for anyone who's not really into our other content, mostly our Dragon Ball content, that's exactly how he always greets me. There's most people either completely interrupt me or definitely don't say anything at all. So that's the type of conversation we're gonna have here. Anyway, guys. Let's get right into this topic. So basically, I am making this video to kind of discuss with MJ and all of you who are listening to this and want to comment on this. Basically, spoiler warnings if you haven't seen the premiere of The Walking Dead episode, I don't even know, season 7 premiere. Anyway, pretty major death scenes in that show.
Yeah.
1, maybe 2 if you haven't seen it or don't know anything about it. It's kind of hard to avoid at this point in time, but
yeah,
basically, who is going to be affected by this particular outcome about these particular deaths the most in terms of the entire group? And I guess I'll open it up by saying, obviously everyone is going to be affected. The rippling effect that's going to come out of this kind of encounter with Negan is going to be felt throughout the series, at least for the next season, maybe 2 or 3, depending on how much they want to do it. But in terms of character weight and development, and just, The Walking Dead defines its characters by their emotional devastation. And we've already seen basically how Rick is dealing with this. After this last episode, he is a changed man for the most part. He's out of it. He is not the leader that he once was at the end of this personal episode. But we also see kind of this, blossoming of character development for someone like Maggie or even Daryl. He has to live with the fact that his outburst, his singular outburst, while granted and, justified, is what got Glenn killed. And now Maggie has to deal with the fact that she's pregnant and also that her husband is dead and all this stuff. And honestly, those are the 3 people that I think are going to be most affected. The people I want to really discuss with MJ about, but I'll let him kind of throw anyone else that he thinks.
Well, you had filled me in on the whole comic situation, so we're expecting Maggie to get some hardcore development, Daryl, though, I definitely want to see where that goes, because if I remember correctly, in season 6, Daryl was kind of already not in his own mind, but kind of there was some episodes where he kind of chose his own revenge to go get back at those guys, which we found out were Negan's people, over the group, you know what I mean? So the fact that it came back and he did it again where he had that outburst, yeah, it's justified, but he had that outburst and he got Glenn killed. He got the guy who found Rick in the tank, you know what I mean? He got the guy who was the pizza guy, he got this guy killed. Glenn is one of those cornerstones, a pillar in this group. He's one of those pillars in the Walking Dead crew in this group, and Daryl, by his outbursts, got him eliminated. He broke that pillar basically on his actions. So I'm interested in seeing how he's gonna develop throughout this arc. What's gonna be going through his head, because he was already kind of fucked in season 6 for the most part. And now this, and then I don't know how's Maggie gonna react with that? Is she gonna be pissed at him? Is the group gonna be pissed at him? What's gonna happen? Are we gonna see a lot of maybe Daryl trying to leave on his own? We don't know. I know they threw him in the back of that van, right? I don't know, but I'm very interested to see where Daryl goes, because I think I'm looking to that to be the biggest development for me, because Maggie, I'm already expecting it. And then with Rick, we already know Rick is going to try and transition from being this broken man to a leader again, in the next couple of seasons. So we're going to see that development. Those are stuff we're expecting, you know what I mean? Daryl, I want to see his. I want to see what's going to happen with him.
Well, with Daryl, what it is the really cool thing about his character and the weight that he gives to the show, and one of the reasons they necessarily can't get rid of him is because he's kind of their only last remaining kind of pillar in terms of, if you're going to use the word pillar, the pillars of the original group left, because there's only, I guess if you want to break it down, there's only 4 if we're counting Morgan at this point. Or no, there's 5 counting Morgan. I keep forgetting Carol. Although Carol's one of my favorite characters. I think she's amazing. I can't wait for this week's episode because I'm pretty sure we're going to be following her. But anyway,
yeah,
I think that when we look at his character, we definitely need to see where he goes. I mean, we just never know. He's just such a wild card. One of the things that keeps this show interesting doesn't necessarily hurt the fact that he is one of the best characters of the show, one of the biggest fan favorites, someone they'll never kill off, even to the point, and it's actually interesting that you're talking about that, where Norman Reedus was saying that the one way he would like to see Daryl, like, basically, I guess, leave the show, if he were ever going to leave the show, is basically just like walking off into the sunset and just kind of separate himself from the group. Now, that would be really heartbreaking, but it would also be kind of, bittersweet in the sense that he's not one of these people who would be, I guess, I don't really know how to, it's like, he's not really someone they can literally kill off. Now, they can let him leave the show and, like, this whole, will he come back, will he never come back, kind of like a Morgan thing. And I think the fans would be a little bit more excited about that, because if they kill him off, it'll be devastating. And when you're talking about that, and when you're talking about, how is Maggie going to react to basically how, what Daryl's actions basically meant for Glenn going forward, and her child and their relationship and just their characters in general. Not something I had thought about, but that's a really interesting thing, because if Norman Reedus is talking about, like, this is the way he wants to end his tenure in the show, if that were to happen anytime soon, even the next 2 or so seasons, personally, like, this would be pretty much a good catalyst for that. Just basically, after Rick's a broken man at the end of this last episode, and even Negan's sitting there going, like, you can't retaliate, or I'm going to send this guy back in pieces, or hell, I'll just make you do it. And even after that, Rick had to, almost cut off Carl's arm in order to kind of get the message. But I think he gets the message now, and he's not going to put Daryl in danger, because those guys are like blood brothers at this point. Negan's sitting there going, did I kill your number one or your number two, your right-hand man? He's like, well, we all know that's not true, because Daryl's definitely that guy for Rick.
Yeah.
And so Rick's not going to have any situation with Daryl, but it would be interesting to see how Maggie reacts to him, especially since she was the only one in that group who was like, we're going to fucking war at the very end of that episode. So, I mean, I think that's actually an interesting concept. If this is the catalyst for him just basically leaving, it's like, this isn't like, this is a volatile area, I just need to be on my own, I'm a lone wolf anyway, and he just leaves, and heartbreak and sadness, but also kind of an interesting character development for the entire show, which would also kind of impact and affect and grow Maggie's character, Rick's character, and Daryl's character at the same time.
It would help, because if he were to leave, the reason why I'm bringing this up, guys, in season 6, there was correct me if I'm wrong, but there was an episode where I remember him leaving to go chase after those guys, and he basically said, fuck y'all. Well, he didn't actually say that, but he said, forget y'all, I'm leaving. He took off to go get revenge on those guys. So I wonder if that they were building up to that. They were building up the whole him kind of like doing these outbursts, and if that's going to get him, not like, what would be the word? Like they kick him from the group? Not so much,
not like they did with Carol. No, I feel like like I said, and what I think you're trying to say is, I think he would just leave. I mean, I think there would be a point where he kind of breaks ties because it's healthier for everybody.
That is true. I just feel like if he were to leave, I think that would evolve him leaving. Like, bro, Glenn getting killed, Abraham getting killed, and then like Daryl like leaving maybe like towards the middle of this. I think that would really help evolve the characters in the show. And plus, remember how me and you and Kanji did a video recently, and we were talking about how basically right now we're just watching this show to see if one of our favorite characters is gonna die, like one of the last 4 that's left of the last 5. Like, it would be cool to see if one of those actually leave, and let's see what happens in the show. Let's see how this show progresses without one of the main characters and one of the better actors on the show, to see how it would do. I'm looking at it from an out-of-universe perspective now, but how it would do from that point of view, if they would just leave. And plus, the fans wouldn't be devastated, because they can always bring him back, like you said. It's always in that up in the air. Will Daryl come back? Will he come back in the war and save? Like, you remember The Outsiders? With Dally, it ain't a rumble without me, have him pull up with his bike, it ain't a war without me, and then but you get the point,
I definitely do, and I think like if this were to happen, it probably won't happen for another couple seasons. I mean, we talked about in that last video that we did about this is like, 10, 12 seasons, that's how much they want. That's how much they're probably going to get at this point, just because of how popular the show is, and it justifies its own existence with its ratings. So you never really know. Personally, like, you know, like I said, based on like comic books and spoiler warnings and whatnot, they're headed for war, which could, you know, if that's the catalyst, if this is what this last season is, like this season's going to be building up to, and everything that this last episode is going to be building up to for the next 2, maybe even 3 seasons, it would be interesting to see how this particular episode ends up rippling into those events and how the characters interact with each other. Because one of the things I think is, one of the reasons that I keep coming back to the show, and I feel like this deserves its own topic in the future, but one of the reasons I keep coming back to this show is, it's not that it's a good show. And I don't want to like put it off. I do really like this show, but I feel like it's probably one of the most compelling shows I've ever seen because it meanders in itself. It's so circular in its storytelling, but what really, really matters is seeing these characters progress and go through the mental trauma and physical trauma that they have to go through. I mean, you were talking about at the beginning of this video how this is going to affect Rick going forward, but we've seen Rick do this so many times. I mean, there's been 7 seasons. We've seen him go through this, basically the same arc 3 times in very different ways, where he's the leader, he's on top, he's the leader, and then something happens to break him down, and he has to basically build himself up to being an even more badass, ruthless, you know, kick-ass kind of leader who can shepherd his people into the next and greater stage. And this is just going to be the penultimate, or even just the ultimate definition of that in terms of the series, although we know the comic books is definitely still going at this point. So,
I mean, me and you both agree that I'm pretty sure we love a badass Rick, but it's expected that right now he's broken and he's gonna evolve in the next, either by the end of this season or in the beginning of next season, he's gonna evolve back into the leader that he was. But it's been done before, so it's expected, and I'm kind of expecting Maggie to turn into this badass because of what you mentioned to me and from spoilers on the comics. So I'm expecting her to do that. I just think this ripple effect, what greater way for it to affect the characters long term, and not just Maggie but all the characters, if somehow Daryl chooses to leave because he realizes his outbursts are hurting the group, you know, like how he got them in that situation last season, and then now this, like, I feel like if he decides to leave, that would evolve the whole entire group, and that gives Maggie room to play the new not leader, but the whole, she's the one who's gonna start running shit and taking over stuff, you know, so there you go.
I no, dude, I completely agree, and we'll leave it at that. Just basically, it's not that we don't want to see characters leave or get killed off as it goes through, but I feel like it's really important because Maggie wouldn't be able to develop as a character if Glenn were still here, or Abraham for that matter. And if they were to give up Daryl or Michonne or Carol or even Morgan at this point, it just kind of gives the show a little bit more room to give more character development to characters that have had potential throughout. I mean, especially certain actors who have shown like potential and become lovable in their own sense, and like people who are not really obnoxious. I mean, the show has been pretty good up until this point to give us main characters that we like, in terms of the people who are, you know, interesting to watch and not just whiny and crybabies and stuff. You know, I'm looking at Andrea, honestly, like, it's not her fault the way the show was written in general, but in terms of how she is in the comic, like that character is written in the comics versus how she's written in the show, or was written in the show, it's a night and day difference. I mean, the Andrea in the comics is so badass at this point that they've literally had to separate her character out into multiple different characters in the show in order to kind of cover all the ground that one character does in the comics. So if you don't read the comics, then go check them out, or at least read about them, because there's definitely a lot of differences that we wish were in the show, but also I feel like the show is a much better told story just because of the way that, like I said before, it meanders on itself, but we see this onward character development and the way these characters interact, and they just keep falling into the same pitfalls. It's almost like life, but life in the zombie apocalypse, and I think that's actually kind of special. So I think that's one of the reasons I keep going back to the show. I feel like it's compelling in that sense. But
it's a good show, man. I mean, it had its problems, but first season, dude, It was awesome. First season was awesome, especially with Lenny James, man, dude. Him and Mr. Lincoln, it was awesome. Just, but yeah.
anyway, guys, we're gonna definitely leave it at that. But make sure to tell us in the comment section below what you guys think about the premiere, and who do you think is going to be affected as much by these deaths. Why? What do you think is going to come of them? Either using spoilers or maybe your own fan theories of how the comic books are going to be diverted from. Like they're going to divert from the comic books to give one character more weight and development. Like we said, Daryl's definitely an interesting character because he has no structured path, and what we see from him is always going to be somewhat original and new to some degree. So definitely make sure to leave those thoughts in the comment section below. But anyway, MJ, thank you so much for joining me on this.
Man, it was awesome.
I'm telling you, dude, like, isn't it fun to kind of sit back and talk about something else on not that we don't anyway, but I'm just saying, just talk about something else while recording a video and being like, yeah, it's a little different, it's a little bit more fun, like.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's always cool to talk about stuff with you, man.
Anyway, guys, we're gonna catch y'all in the next video, Dragon Ball, Walking Dead, or anything, and make sure to go check out MJ. Like I've said in the past, he doesn't necessarily cover much besides Dragon Ball, or anything besides Dragon Ball at this point, but give him some time, maybe he'll decide to cover other stuff that he's more passionate about or something. But definitely go make sure to check him out if you like Dragon Ball content, because he makes some real quality stuff. Anyway, guys, we're gonna catch you on the next video. Bye.